Hey there, and welcome to YAS, a stripper podcast. On this podcast, we'll discuss how classifying each other as people and workers is dangerous to society and marginalized groups of people. We'll also talk about the climate in and outside of the strip clubs and all of the amazing things that strippers do. And of course, we'll talk about all of the things in between. I'm your queen, A.M. Davies, and this is YAS, a stripper podcast. Hi everyone, AMD here. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. Today's guest that you're going to hear speak, her name is Jelicia, and we had an absolute wonderful time speaking with each other. It's not the first time we've spoken. I actually had the pleasure of being on her podcast called The Thotful Hoe, and that's how originally I met Jelicia. And since then, we've stayed in contact, and now it's time for her to come on to this show. Jelicia is such an inspiring person and really goes to the heart of things. And as you're going to learn in this episode, she was born with two broken legs, as some would see as a disadvantage, but you know, she is an incredibly strong person and has perspectives and understandings that I certainly don't. She opened my eyes to the way we learn in school and to the way specifically people of color, specifically women of color, have a much harder time out in the work world from the jump. And listen, not that I've been blind or ignorant to these things in the past, but she worded it in such a way that was so tangible and so easy for all of us to understand, and to really like sit back and ask yourself, like, is this right? Is this fair? Is this how we want to continue on in the world, treating people like this? And for me, the answer is no. It's not fair, and it's not how I want to treat people, and it's not how I want the rest of the world to treat people. And the time is up for that bullshit. And so I really want to give a huge thank you to Jelicia for spending the time with me and for sharing her story with all of you, because I think you're going to learn a lot from listening to Jelicia's story. So I'm going to shut my fucking white mouth and let her have the mic and tell you what it is. Jelicia, here she comes.
I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, but before we get to Jelicia, I want to remind you that this is becoming a listener-funded podcast. And thank you so much to people who have been donating. You're making our dreams come true. And just remember that all donations are going towards paying our guests, retroactively, current and new guests. So if you listen to this podcast regularly and you really, really love it, then please consider sending a donation to paypal.me/yes, a stripper podcast. Thank you in advance for helping us get money into strippers' hands, people who have been out of work for a long time during the pandemic. Enough of all of that. Let's meet our new guest, Jelicia. Hello, Queen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is amazing, and I love what you do and what you stand for, so I'm all about it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you and talk about all of the amazing things that you do. But first, can you let our audience know what your pronouns are?
Yeah, so I go by she, her, hers, or them, but spelt THEMME. So them like femme.
Interesting. Is this something that you kind of came up with, or I'm just not that hip, so I need to
Honestly,
be learned.
there's so many pronouns and there's so many ways that people go about, identifying themselves, right? And
Yeah.
comfortable. So I don't know if it's a thing. I feel like I just kind of was like, oh, I like this way because I am a female,
Yeah.
but I'm also like, I do have very non-binary traits as well. So
Yeah. That's really intriguing to me because I am like have a lot of questions for myself lately. And so would you mind talking about what you like, because you're like, oh, I am a female, but I have non-binary traits, not treats. Oh my gosh, could you imagine? Would you
I mean, that
mind?
could be a thing too.
Exactly. Could you just like, I don't know, share about
Like
what you
go
mean by
a
that?
little bit deeper into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So basically, I've always been somebody who loved like men's clothing and um I guess presenting myself while I was trying to find myself within my like sexuality and things. I presented myself more on the masculine side, but I realized that's not exactly who I am. Like I do like men's clothing and all that stuff,
Hmm.
but I also like having that mixture of like putting on a red lip or like doing my
Yeah,
lashes and my eyebrows and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it only felt right doing like a mixture of the two, right? So I was able
yeah,
to have my femininity and also have that strongness of like being comfortable within masculine clothing and all that stuff. And as I became more comfortable within myself, my outer appearance ended up being more comfortable as well.
yeah. Did you notice, like, as a young person that you were playing with the boys or like, you know,
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. I always knew that I was going to um, be somebody who didn't have like a Barbie dream house kind of vibe to it. I always had that aspect of like being, I guess, what somebody would call like being like a boy instead of like a girl when I was younger and a child, right? And people would be like, I don't know why your daughter likes to like play in the dirt and why she wants to go and do this and that. And at the same time, I was like, I like doing those things, but I also like playing Barbies, but it's just, you know, I can't always be playing with the barbs out here. Like, I also kind of was figuring it out. During that uh, adolescent time, that's when I started to realize, okay, I'm not necessarily like all my friends around me. So like it started making me feel weird and me feel strange. And I started to question if I was normal, right? Because you don't know. You're just a kid and you're kind of like trying to figure everything out, right?
totally. Yeah, I was just talking about this with my mother last night where I'm like, I've just been told my whole life like that I'm should dress and look a certain way, and I've been put in this box, I feel like, and it's not until recently where I've been like, what the fuck? I don't want to be in that box because, like, I got big tits and blonde hair, and I'm like the Barbie, like you said, and like I'm annoyed by that
Yeah.
now.
I just feel like growing up, I was just told so many things that were so binary that when
Hmm.
you grow up and you start to question things, especially if you grew up in like a religious or spiritual household, because like I grew up in a pretty religious and spiritual household, and like we go to church every
Yeah,
Sunday, and then eventually like it just got to a place where I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like I don't want to be coming here. People aren't friendly as they're
right.
coming off to be. Like I just
They're super
yeah, like
judgy.
I
Religion's
remember
so
like I
judgy.
I was at church and my sister, she was pregnant around this time and she's 19 at the time she was pregnant. So she had like she was going to school, so she was in college. She was also a Sunday school teacher at the church. And I heard people talking about her saying, like, can you believe that she's pregnant and like she's not married and she's in school? So how is she gonna do this? And I just remember being like, talking about my sister and like are you guys not supposed to be friendly and not judgy, and like, you guys are supposed to be sweet people, right? I don't understand why it's not
Right.
happening like that. And at that point I was like, yeah, I can't do this. I can't. This has ruined and skewed my views of what I believe religion and like going to church is all about, right? It's all about
Right.
accepting people, but you can't accept people. You're actually doing the opposite. So it confused. Like I was
Exactly.
like, it's so weird. Like everything's supposed to be about love and
Yeah.
about, unity and helping one another. And this is not like, at that time, I think I was like 12. So I realized like, this is not where it's at right now.
Yeah, I can't even tell you how many sex workers I've spoken to on this show that like grew up in a religious, in a religious atmosphere and like at a very young age was like, wait, something's off, and then ended up being like the biggest slut. And I'm just like, what is this pattern that I'm
It's
finding?
like this
You know?
inner rebellion that like
Yeah, I
bubbles up
guess.
inside and then it just comes out and you're just like, okay.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely like those aspects of life that you didn't know that you weren't supposed to be doing. Like you were
Right,
shunned
right.
away from your sexuality and discovering yourself and asking questions about your body and your changes and the questions that are going in your head. You have nobody to talk to because religion
Yeah.
doesn't talk about that kind of stuff. It kind of shames it. So
Mm. What about in school? Did you go to school outside of the States?
yes, so I'm in Canada. I was
Hmm.
born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So yeah, like growing up I moved a lot, and because I moved a lot, I just didn't even bother like making friends with people because I was like, what's the point? Like
Dang.
I'm gonna be your friend, we're gonna get close, and then I'm gonna move. So it doesn't matter. So yeah, I was also super different from a lot of the kids I was going to school with. Like I was born with broken legs, so I was homeschooled for a very long time.
Wow.
And when I finally went to school, like I craved school, like I craved it so much because my sisters were going and I'm like, I need to go to school. This seems like such a great thing. Like,
Wow.
you guys have recess? What's that? Like all these things,
Yeah.
right? And like I craved going to school. So I didn't go to school until I was in grade like 3. And at
Okay.
that point, like all these people were in kindergarten, started, building their little friendships and stuff. And I always felt like such a little outsider with like my leg braces on, and I'm just like going to school and I'm kind of like walking funny and doing weird things that nobody else understands, but I'm like, this is what it's supposed to be. School's great. Why isn't no one playing with me? Like,
Yeah.
so naturally I feel like I've always been like an outcast. So talking about sex work, going into sex work, all that, like, I feel like it's just a natural progression of what I'm already used to,
I
which is,
get it.
going against the grain, being a little bit of a rebel, like being a little bit
Yeah.
of an outsider.
Yeah. So, do you mind if I ask about your legs? Is that okay to
Yeah, yeah,
talk
no, no,
about?
no, of course.
Okay. Um, Thank you. Um,
Yes.
what I don't even know where to begin. I've not met anybody or spoken to anybody. Maybe I have met somebody who had their legs broken at birth, but didn't come up. But what is it like in daily life? Like, are you healed? Do you feel okay, is that like a residual issue for you?
I don't know. I kind of feel like it's like a residual issue,
Hmm.
but just within the last couple years, like I've had broken toes in the last couple years. I had a broken foot, like
Oh, that's right.
broke in January. Yes, when we talked to each other.
Yes.
So, like, I just feel like I've always been like super like leg fragile and like talking to my mother or my grandmother about like any issues and with my legs or my feet, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, you're not supposed to do that, you shouldn't be doing
Mm.
that. Like when I told them in January that I broke my foot rock climbing, they were like, what, you shouldn't be rock climbing, you were born broken, like, can you just chill? And I'm like, no, I want to do this, I gotta do it. Like,
Yeah. How does that, was it just the way that you came
I think
out?
I think the way that like the doctor had like pulled me out of my mom, like, I guess because I like back in the like the 90s and stuff, like early 90s, 80s type deal, like they didn't really have like knowledge of certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And as things progressed, I feel like they've learned a lot of more useful tips for
Yeah.
bringing people into the world. And on top of it, when you're part of a marginalized community and you're a person of color, it doesn't matter what you're saying to doctors a lot of the time. You could be like, I'm in pain. This doesn't feel right. Like, this is weird. This doesn't feel like my other two births. What's going on? Like, but at that point, doctors don't listen to you really when you're a marginalized person of color. They just kind of brush it off, right?
I have heard yes. Yes, and it's infuriating. And I'm sorry that
It's
that.
scary. Like the stats are scary about how
Mm-hmm.
many women and people of color come in, and it gets even worse if you're a woman and you're a person of color,
Right.
because like you're definitely just put into this box of like, it's probably all in their head. Like,
Right.
they've dealt with years of slavery, they can deal with a headache. like
Yeah.
like automatic, like, oh, you you got pain mechanism control. But like, it really is scary, and
Yeah.
it's it's worse to hear about the amount of people that go in the hospital to give birth and
Mm-hmm.
they don't come out, but their baby comes out and is given up for adoption or put into foster care, right? So it's like,
Right.
it's scary.
It is. The world is a scary place in
Oh yeah,
general.
it's
Yeah.
terrifying. Like,
Yeah. So, I noticed that you went to journalism school,
yeah,
and something that you wrote in preparation for this podcast to me was that you only took the course because of the lack of representation in
yeah,
the Black and Indigenous people of color community and LGBTQ in media. Can you share
yeah.
more about that with
I'd
us?
love to share about
Yes,
that.
talk
Like,
away, please.
um, yeah. So I was given an opportunity when I was 16. I'm 30 now. I'll be 31 soon. So I was given an opportunity about 15 years ago, to work for this magazine, Urbanology magazine. And I was able to do event coverage. So I was able to fly to places to cover events and be able to go to concerts and all sorts of things. I did book reviews, movie reviews, album reviews, like all sorts of things. So I really loved the fact that the founder was a female and a person of color. And
Yes.
she too took journalism in school because the lack of representation. And she is a couple years older than me. So the fact that somebody a couple years older than me went into journalism for a way of having representation and years later creates this magazine and is the founder of something super amazing is so encouraging, right? So I was
Mm.
like, something, there's still no representation. So I have to take this because it's a passion. I really love it. And I need to see representation. Like,
Right.
I need to see things from my perspective. And I think people need to see things from my perspective too. Um, but with that being said, um, I think she was shunned a lot of times before she decided, you know, something, I'm just going to create my own thing.
Mm.
Because she herself was always somebody who stood up for the little guy, and she would have long reviews in like newspapers within Toronto about an issue that she was passionate about. And
Yeah.
it was crazy that they would print something from this person that's in like high school in the newspaper. So I think that was like something that pushed her, and seeing her drive and her pushing against all barriers and making something that seems like it's an impossible thing when people are telling you it's impossible, right? Like that just motivated me. And the fact that there still wasn't representation, I was like, I need to do this. So I will never forget being in college and being like, okay, we had this assignment, and the teacher passes out all these forms, and the forms are a test, and the test has different questions on it. There was 100 questions, and you're supposed to deduct a certain amount of points. So you have 100 questions and 100 points, and as you deduct, like some points are, or some questions are worth like point, some are worth half a point, some are
Mm.
worth 2 points, right? So you're seeing how many points you have after this. The assignment had questions on it that were like, are you a male? Do you identify as a female? Are you a person of color? Are you part of the LGBTQ community? And as you like cross things out, like the teacher's trying to like prove to us and show us like in the real world, this is what they look at, right?
Mm.
So he's like, okay, so how many points are you left with? And I'm left with like 10 points at the end of this thing. Like I had to minus, there was no plus. I didn't gain, I lost. And he's like, well, why is that? And I was like, I lost within the first like 5 questions because I'm a woman of color. I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community. I am coming from a home that isn't like a rich household. I'm also coming from immigrant parents. Like I lost within the first couple questions. And he's like, okay, so I want to hear from the white men in this class. Like, how did you do? And they're like, oh, I'm at like 90. Some people were at like 110. And it's
How
just
did they get points? I thought we couldn't add. They got extra for being white males?
yeah. So basically, for the 100 questions, it's either you minus those points or you add those points. So everybody starts off with 100. That's the
Got it.
base. And I was just like, okay, so this is the world. This is what I'm getting into right now. And I just remember being like, I don't like this assignment. It's too real world for me. Like,
Was that high school, you said?
no, this was when I was in college
That was
taking
in
journalism.
college. Okay. And they were like, this is okay. Like,
Yeah, like the questions were so hardcore. Like they were like things like, oh, are you coming from parents that like, did your parents go to school? Did your parents get married? Do they own a house? And it's like, um,
what
no,
fucking school is this?
I
Like,
am coming from a home that is not um to par according to the sheet. Like according to the sheet, I should have been a crazy person. So like according to this, like the only outcome for this sheet is for me to be like, okay, well, I'm sad. Like, but it was to prove that you had to work harder because the teacher himself, like he was of Indian descent and he was a first generation immigrant. So he was like, this is to prove that everybody else in the class that didn't get to add any points today, you guys are the ones that are going to have to work your ass off, basically. Like you have to work in order to get even half as far as your like classmates here. And I just remember sitting there like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I'm in a journalism class and it's like predominantly like white men in this class. So
Yeah, and the last thing we want is white men to continue to control the narrative in this world.
exactly, right? So
Yeah.
like, and that was like my first year, and I just remember being like, okay, so if I leave and I drop out, then I'm gonna be a statistic. And like I was thinking about like the future, like what if I had a kid and my kid's doing this class? Now it's like the questions are like, did your parents go to college or university? And it's like, no, like I kind of felt like, okay, I need to break this cycle of whatever is happening right now. I need to break the cycle of the views of people towards people within marginalized communities
Hmm.
because, you know, they think that you're not as intelligent because you haven't had all the resources. But at the end of the day, you haven't had all those resources because they weren't ever given to you as an opportunity, right? You're seen as less than. So you're never given those opportunities.
Right.
So that's like a long-winded way of saying like why I
Right.
thought, okay, like it's really important to stay in this course. And oh, and the last year that like this is the year that we're like graduating and stuff. I had been diagnosed with like ovarian and cervical cancer, so I graduated like a year after everybody else because I had to like do like a gap time. And yeah, like the teacher had said, you know, something for all the students that are of color, you're going to have to push because within media, they have like it's kind of like a checklist. And if they've filled that quota of people that they need, so if they filled out like we have one person that is of Indian descent, we have one person of African descent. Okay, we're good. We we got enough cultures in here going on. Like he's like, yeah, you guys have to like fight and make sure that any work that you're ever going to turn in is perfect. And you have to make sure that you understand that you're going to put out a bunch of resumes to all these companies and they're not going to come back to you. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay and you have to keep pushing and driving and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, in the beginning of this course, like I had this terrible test. Like it made me like remember I had this terrible test in the beginning and now I have this like professor that's telling me I still got to work hard. So it's like, you know, I'm so happy to be able to have somebody like you that is willing to have me on their platform and actually talk to me and speak with me. And
I'm honored. Are you kidding
really
me?
it really makes it like worth every trial and tribulation in a way, right?
Yeah, but the way I see it is like, thank you for saying yes to me. That's how I see it. I'm not doing you a
you're
favor. You're doing me.
you're so sweet.
But like, I'm genuinely honored to have you here and to share these stories so vulnerably and authentically. So, like,
Thank you.
yes, thank you. So,
That is definitely my motto, living authentically, being authentically you.
yeah,
Always.
I can tell that from the encounters that we've had and looking through your account and reading your website and and so So that, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about some points of things that
Yeah, of
you
course.
have said on your website that really stood out to me. And I guess to kind of stay on topic, one of the things you wrote, it's so crazy to think that this whole idea for the podcast came from not being able to find topics like the ones covered readily available. So, just to give everyone context, you have your own podcast. So, I'd love it if you could um, tell us the name of your podcast. I want you to describe it in your own words, and then explain that part. It's crazy to think this whole idea from the podcast came from being able to not find topics.
Yeah, so the Thoughtful Hoe is the name of the podcast, and it came from having friends that were sex workers and having friends that were people of color and not being able to find anything or any information or have voices um, being heard. There's so many um, platforms out there for so many different topics and different people, and sex workers and dancers and people of the BIPOC community and people of LGBTQ plus, they are sadly put on like the back burner, and it takes people like you and I to be able to share those stories. And it's really important that people hear stories that aren't being shared on the in the mainstream media.
Mm.
And I feel like those are the most authentic stories, the ones that aren't being shared. And it's really sad that you can't really find that stuff. It's not readily available for you. So I wanted to make sure that I had a place that people could feel comfortable and people could come to, and that people would understand that they're not alone and understand that there's people just like them. You have friends, you have allies, you have people that you can come to, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very recently, I reached out to like sponsor type, you know, platforms that help match up podcasts with platforms, and YAS, a stripper podcast, because I'm very particular about what I'll let advertise or sponsor the show. It has to be ethically, like an ethical brand, and not too capitalistic or commercially. And so I was like, well, let me see if there's a service, and I like applied, I guess you can call it, and they were like, you're too small, denied. And I got denied like by 3 different services because of the listener count. And I was just thinking, like, but how do we get bigger without your help?
Yeah, it's such a weird concept. Like,
Yeah.
people want to see your growth and want to see what you can do for them.
Right.
Like, you need to understand that I can't do anything for you until you give me a shot, like you give me a chance. How,
Right.
how do you get these references if nobody ever is willing to come and be with you and like give you a chance? And
Yeah.
I just don't understand. The concept is so weird. It's
Yeah.
just so weird. Such a
Yeah.
capitalistic concept. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it really is crazy.
I'm like so.
Colonialism at its finest.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm so sick of capitalism to the point where I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to do to make money for a minute because I can't be involved in this shit. And that's a extremely privileged place. I understand that. Um, I'm very fortunate to have family take care of me during this transitional time, but the thought of getting involved in capitalism is just like
It
just
it's
scraping a fork
scary.
across my brain, basically. Like, it's nasty. You know what I mean? That was
Exactly.
really graphic. I'm sorry if that was triggering to anybody.
It's so it's so scary in a sense that, like, little pieces of paper have become currency and not the value that you can bring to a person or the help that you can give someone. Like all of those things, it's like I would have loved to be able to help on someone's farm and they look at me and be like, I'm willing to have you around me. I'm willing to let everybody know about you. Like,
Right.
it's like if you don't have assets to share with a lot of these sponsors and stuff, they're not willing to give you a shot, give you a chance.
Exactly. And it was almost kind of like each one that rolled in, I was like, well, who is going to give us a chance then? Because I look at it as all of us, right? Because the goal here is to make this show successful so that we can give back to the community. And it it just felt really rejecty
Yeah.
and like yeah, like almost like the numbers are what create your worth. Numbers, not just in like just in general, I'm speaking like how much you have in your bank account, how fancy is your car,
Yep.
how many listeners do you have, how many followers do you have, and it's just like that's what's become like this way of measuring our worth as human beings. And I find that to be almost robotic and less human.
Yeah, it is scary. Like
Hmm.
I remember when Instagram started out and people were like, "Oh, I have this many followers and that many followers." And I just thought it was so like such a weird concept and I just remember being like, "Unless this thing is paying me and paying my bills, I just don't care." And then it just like blew up and became a platform where people could really just like pay their bills off of this thing. And I was like, this is such a weird concept because all these influencers look the same. And I don't know why anybody wants influencing in their lives. Because when people are under the influence of something, it's usually a negative thing. So I don't really
That's
understand the
such a good point.
concept of like influencers. Like, so you're basically saying you're some type of drug. Like, I just don't understand. Like,
Yeah,
it's,
that's a
it's such
good
a weird
point.
concept. Like, where did that come from? Like, how did that word become the thing that we're going to use for these people? Like,
I don't know. They can spin anything and make it look good, right? Just so long
yeah,
as the people on the top are able to sell their products and keep lining their own pockets and then getting rich while the rest of their workers are getting poor. Like, and everyone's just like, well, that's just how it is. That's capitalism. And then they just like keep doing, and I'm like, how are we all still just like chugging along with this idea as we're watching the system continue to be more and more broken and at such a rapid pace, and we're also watching it in such a rapid manner because we have all these screens,
yeah, it's
everything's
crazy.
online.
It's like I don't even know if we're consumers or if we're consuming. Like I don't understand the difference. Like, are you selling me something at the same time that I'm consuming your pictures? Like I just don't, like it's just such
Oh my
a
god.
weird world that we live in. And I think I realized this like maybe like 10 years ago. I was just like, honestly, the world is just full of ads and I need to be able to put blockers on where I'm not going to be so oversaturated with all this stuff. Like there's ads on our phones all the time. You talk and your phone's all of a sudden putting up these ads that you were just talking about and you're like, okay, you're driving along the road and there's an ad, a billboard, this, that. I just it's so much and it's so overwhelming. You forget that you're a person and you're not just a consumer. You forget that you also have to just live a life and you forget about the things that really matter to you. Like, do you care about having these new pair of shoes or are you being told to care about having these new pair of shoes? Like,
Right. Like when the new iPhones come out and everyone's in line, I'm like, okay, like I remember I went to the store and I was like, I'll have another iPhone 4, please. And they they laughed at me. They were like, you can't even get that anymore. And I was like, oh, like, cause I don't give a fuck about your new phone, you
I
know?
literally just got a new phone, and I've had like the same phone. I'm a total grandma because I don't believe in that whole consuming of things.
Right.
So I like to like run whatever I have to the ground. Like I just got a new phone. I just recently this month I got a new car, and I'm like, everything that I have is getting run to the ground, to the last bolt, to the last charge. Like
Yeah.
just the way that I am. Like
Yeah.
it really has to be really done with for me to even think about getting a next something, because I've just never been somebody that can consume like that. And in high school, I think I was so blinded by that kind of stuff. So I was very like consuming everything. And I just remember being like, you're not going to be able to buy all these fancy things when you move out or like when you're
Right.
on your own. And that was my mentality. So I kept like consuming so much stuff to the point where I was just like, I wear the same like 5 things. Like,
Exactly.
what's the point of having all of this stuff at the end of the day? Like, is it making me happy, or am I told that it's going to make me happy? Like, I don't know anymore, right?
Yeah, I've been joking like I um I was talking to my mom. I talk to her a lot because I live with her, so I reference conversations a lot with her about her. But I was like, I'm so tired of seeing like politicians or celebrities like tagging like wearing Versace or like wearing Dior or whatever. And I'm like, I want to see somebody right wearing shit that I found at Goodwill, like do that. That I would be impressed with. You wearing Versace? I'm not fucking impressed with your Versace.
I
Okay.
don't understand. Like, half the time I'm like, you look so basic. Like, like, I don't understand. Like, you look so basic. You literally look like everybody, and it's weird. It is weird. Everybody has a particular look that they're going for. The contours are getting crazy. The lips
Oh,
are getting
you mean
crazy.
on the
The
face?
tits, the ass, like yeah, the contour on the face. Like I just can't. Like everybody looks the same, and they all look like they're in pain. I'm like, your face doesn't move. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but it's all because it's what's been sold to us is this is the ideal way to look and to be and what to wear. And it's what we're talking about. It's constant commercialism, which is something that I think gets left out of the conversation because like I think there's like three top things that we're trying to dismantle, which is capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy. But
yeah,
commercialism is huge, and that involves the media, and the media is a huge contributor to all the things and
yeah.
include
Scary. You
commercialism.
break down the media, and there's only like 3 or 4 main stations that all branch out to own substations. And it's scary because it's like there's no voices of
Hmm.
anybody that's different.
Hmm.
Even when you see somebody that's different,
Hmm.
like they are programmed to be a certain way. So even that, like I was like, I don't want to like go into media and be someone's like black girl magic. Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to be this black girl magic for your quota. Like that's not what I'm here for. That's not what I'm about.
Right, like you'd much rather be hired for your skill and your
Exactly.
talents and what you bring to the table.
And
Right.
that's why I was like, honestly, if I can't find it, I will create it. And that was it. Like I was like, I'm gonna have the thoughtful hoe because I can't find it and I need to create it. I need to create it because I need something that is for me, by me, and if no one even listens to it, it is therapy. Like
Right.
listening And having listeners, it's just a bonus. That's just like that added lovely bonus. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was therapeutic to be able to talk to people and have lovely conversations with people and be honest and
Yeah.
authentic and real and no saturation of the BS that's all around us, right? Like just getting down to our bare bones, really, like
Yeah.
just being as like raw and naked as possible, really.
Right. I have a really random question for you.
Yeah.
But like, I'm just curious to know if you could see, if you like, what would make you excited to see like a Tide commercial or like a pizza commercial or somebody like, because for me, every time I see commercials, I'm like, why are the most beautiful people washing their own clothes? Like super beautiful, rich looking people.
Already clean clothes.
You're not buying Tide. You're not. So, what would you like? Because I know what I would like to see in commercials to represent everyday basic shit that we use. What would you
I
like to see?
legit saw it in a commercial. It was a Pampers diaper commercial, and it was this black man changing his black daughter's diaper in the commercial. And I was like, this is around right now during this time because Black Lives Matter. Let's be honest. Like, because of the Black Lives Matter hype, everybody is like, I am not one of them. So let's get some Black people on TV. Like, put
Yeah.
them in commercials. But when I saw it, I was like, something, it's a huge step in the right direction. Like, it's a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But it's coming out because of Black Lives Matter. I'm really sad about that, but at the same time, it's like at least you're paying attention to what's going on around you. You're not living in some little bubble.
Yeah. Trying. I just want to see normal working class people.
Yeah,
That's what I'm looking for. Like, can
right.
we see who we actually are on the TV and not like super rich, polished people all the time?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
in Toronto, there's this guy. He worked for one of the super high news stations in Toronto. It's like called CP24. He like worked for them, and he's Black,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like legit like the best because he would just say the like utmost hilarious things, and he was so real and just so raw, and like it was like the best representation of
Mm-hmm.
like us because it was pure. Like
Mm-hmm.
the station could not stop him. They're not going to fire him over it because like I mean, you can't fire him because if Black people realize and people of color realize like he's missing, they're going to be at your doorstep wondering where
Right.
the hell he went, right? So he was like awesome. He had like what's his name? Brandon Gomez. And he was awesome. Like he had one time that he was like doing a streeter, and this woman like came up behind him and he's like, ma'am, you're doing too much. Like like he was like so raw and so real. And there's one time the sun was like glistening on him and he got a glimpse of himself in the monitor and he's like, oh, melanin popping. Like did the like utmost, and I loved it. I was so happy. And something like now he like left, and it was a really hard decision for him, and he left that media company that people would dream about like working for, right? And he created his own, and he
Nice.
has his own like weekly news segments on his YouTube channel, and I love it because it's like representation at its finest.
Mm.
He stated like it was really hard for him to want to leave, but he knew that he had to do it for himself.
Yeah.
And like I love that, like that pure, genuine love of wanting to get stories out. Like it's just so pure and it's so beautiful to watch, and it's so beautiful to watch coming from a man. Like
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful thing, because it's like men are always told like you need the power, you need the money, you need the car to get the girls,
Oh
like,
yeah.
and for him to be like, I'm going to step away from this because this is not what I am. This is not representing me in all
Hmm.
kindness. Sorry, my dogs.
Oh no, I'm actually really curious about your little dog.
Say it.
Oh, what a cute little, oh my God. What is that, Chihuahua?
Yeah, he's like,
Oh, what a cutie.
he just woke up all of a sudden. He was sleeping on the pillow, and then he's like, ah.
He's very cute. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Wow, I could just sit here and talk with you about the fucked upness of the world for hours.
I know,
I don't
right? It's
know. It
so
feels
crazy.
so good.
It
It,
feels really nice to like kind of have a release of things, right?
exactly.
I believe that the things that you see around you and that you take are very absorbable in your body. You absorb all that stuff. You absorb the negativity, you absorb the media,
Yeah.
you absorb whatever you're consuming, right? So it's like to be able to like release some of that, like it's healing as well.
Yeah.
Add
This
that with some crystals and some witchy magic and you're good. Like,
Yeah, I want to get into witchy stuff for sure.
I love witchy power. Like I believe that everyone is a witch and it's just about tapping into it, and you know, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Want to be fabulous just like these strippers? Pay attention. It's Stripper Tips.
Oh my gosh. Insoles. Insoles are gonna be your best friend. Like it sounds so weird, but like pleasers aren't always as comfortable as people go on, especially like the ones like nowadays and stuff. They're
Right.
like, their quality is getting really shitty.
I
So
know.
like insoles, like it sounds so weird to say, but like you need insoles.
So you put them in like the padding part of the
Yeah, the
stripper
padding,
heel?
they have like the little, like not the full on long
Right.
ankle that you see in like your shoe, but they have like the little gels that go right on the pads of the feet and the heel, and like just like, and yeah, it makes such a world of a difference.
I have done that before, and you're right, it does make a world of a difference. And for our audience members who don't know what pleasers are, because not everyone
Oh
is
yeah.
a stripper, it's this stripper shoe company that we have been consuming for years and years, and now because there's a higher demand for these shoes from civilians, um,
Mm.
and pole dance hobbyists, they have, what we all are theorizing. I mean, we don't know, we're not looking at their books, but the product is cheaper, which means they're probably buying shittier materials, selling it at the same price, if not
Yeah,
more.
I
Yeah.
think I remember when like those times where somebody would save for like a pair of like pleasers, and that would be like,
Hmm.
ah, like it
Hmm.
would be like, I just got a pair of pleasers, and it's like, yes.
Hmm.
And now it's kind of like I see more people being like, just bought these and they're broken.
Yes. Yes.
I'm seeing more and more of that, so I'm like, oh, gotta
Yeah.
go find some independent companies, right?
Hmm.
Because when people see that those companies that were like super high in demand are starting to make really crappy quality, that's when those like small businesses are gonna start booming, because there's gonna be people that are gonna create better things, right?
Yeah.
It's all about research too.
Yeah, and it's a good time to like sort of pressure our audience to purchase things from sex worker owned businesses,
Which
not
there
only to
are
support
so
them.
many. There
There's
are
so many.
so many.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about just doing some research. Like honestly, Amazon is great and I love it, but I always try to find that company that's on Amazon and see if I could buy whatever from them.
Directly.
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
Etsy's really good with that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it, it's always about helping the little guy. You don't know what kind of portion they're getting out of your sale on Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, fuck Amazon, union busting assholes anyway. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I really tried to avoid Amazon as much as possible.
Yeah. It literally comes down to as much as possible.
I know.
You know that there's just certain things you're like, I don't want to do this, but like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
all about if you have the right intentions, really. It's about having the right intentions.
Get ready for our rapid fire question round. It's time for 4 for 1.
Question number 1. If animals could talk, which animal would be the rudest?
I feel like a monkey. Monkeys throw shit at people. So they would be like, fuck off.
Good call. Good call.
And then throw shit.
I wasn't expecting that. All right. What sport would be the funniest to add a mandatory amount of alcohol to?
Oh my gosh. Tennis.
That's so funny. I was just thinking tennis.
Like, I would love to see drunk people playing tennis or like badminton or something that deals with like hand-eye coordination with tiny little things. Like,
Oh
I
my
think that would be the greatest.
Oh, that's so good. What would be your weapon of choice in a zombie apocalypse?
Oh my gosh, like some kind of like flamethrower or something. Like,
It's a
I
good one.
need a flamethrower.
Because
I
then
was
you wouldn't have to get that
obsessed with
close.
zombies at a point in time. Like, I was super obsessed with them. Like, I was like, I'm ready for anything.
Do you have a zombie apocalypse team? Not a part of 4 for 1. A follow-up question.
No, I don't. I still got to get that flamethrower. So,
Yeah, get that first. Yeah, priorities. Last one. If you could invite 3 people to dinner, living or dead, who would you invite?
oh my gosh, cool. Um, I totally invite my great grandma because I regret not listening to her more and asking her more questions about being able to be on a plane for the very first time and like all that kind of stuff. She's Jamaican, so like when Jamaican went independent, that would have been cool to hear about lived experiences. Who else? Living or dead? Oh my gosh. This sounds so weird, but I would love to talk to Oprah to find out if she's like whitewashing things to be more consumable.
Mm.
So when she first came out, she was very controversial, and then I don't know, people started loving her. So like, I want to know, like, did you end up having to whitewash? Like, tell me a little bit about that. And the third person, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. I'm like stuck between a couple different people, but I would have loved to know, like, I don't have a relationship with my dad, so I would love to talk to his mom. His mom has passed away, and I would love to be like, so why is your kid the way that he is? Like, I think I would like to be like, I don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
explain this to me, because I'm a very inquisitive person. So
Yeah. I love that. It's very thoughtful answers. Thank you. So, everyone, just one more reminder that this is a listener funded podcast as of now, as we work towards building sponsorship partnerships with ethical brands. But if you really love this show and you want to give back, you can donate to us at paypal.me/yes, a stripper podcast. The majority of the donations do go to our guests, retroactively to our past guests, and to new and current guests, and also to your hosts. Because we work for free. So it would be awesome if you could donate to Yes, a Stripper Podcast at paypal.me/Yes, a Stripper Podcast. Jelicia, it has been such a pleasure talking with you.
So amazing talking with you.
Thank you.
It's a breath of fresh air.
Thank you. Same. Can you please tell everyone how to follow you and learn more about your podcast so they can become new listeners to your show?
Yeah, the Thoughtful Hoe. So that's the name of the podcast. It's streaming on pretty much all platforms. I've seen the podcast pop up on like the most random of platforms, so you could literally find it anywhere. So
Awesome.
it's the THE thoughtful THOTFUL Hoe HOE. So yeah, and then for the Instagram, it's the Thoughtful Hoe podcast.
Awesome. Do you have anything coming up or that anything in particular that you want people to pay attention to in the next month or so?
Wow, it's really awesome that you say that because I had a friend and my friend was telling me like your logo is like so cool. Have you ever thought of putting it on something? And I was like, I've always wanted to have panties. Like I want to sell my panties for money. So like I'm looking at kind of like looking into designing some panties out
Oh my
here.
gosh, how fun.
Yeah,
Please let
some
us
little
know.
crotchless numbers. It's always really hard to find like the
Crotchless.
perfect crotchless panty. Like
Yes.
and thongs and like boxers. I'm literally wearing boxers now. I'm like a huge
Love it.
boxer person. I love a good boxer brief. So like I want to try to create something for all people, right?
Yes.
I don't
Thank
want to just make things just for one. I need jock straps, all this kind of stuff. So
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. So please share links with this podcast so that we can share your links because like
yeah, of
I
course.
need new underwear in my life made by sex workers. So yes, please.
Thank you so much for having this platform for all types of people and like especially having a voice for sex workers. It's really, really important.
Yeah,
Their voices are silenced all the time,
I know.
and people start making really terrible jokes about like strippers and sex workers and all this stuff, and it just needs to stop. Not,
Hmm.
we're not butt of jokes. Like
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. And thank you for your work and thank you for being with us here today. It's been a
no worries.
pleasure. Yeah, and thank you to all of you out there in listening land for tuning in to Yes, a Stripper podcast. Be sure to tune in every Wednesday. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and do all the things. See you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. This episode has been a production with Period Podcast Network. Find out more on Instagram at Period Podcast Network. Be sure to follow us on Instagram too at Yes, a Stripper Podcast, and you can find us on Twitter at Yes, a Stripper Pod. Please like, subscribe, and rate Yes, a Stripper Podcast here on YouTube. See you next week.